Welcome to Corpstruction, the podcast of the Tulsa District, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. I'm your host, Brandon Parrish. Today I have with me Lee Conley. Lee is our Deputy District Engineer for Programs and Management here at the Tulsa District. Lee is getting ready to retire, and I've got him here to talk about some of his accomplishments and his career over, 30 years now?
35, yeah.
35 years. So, Lee, you started with the Army. Can you tell us about how that was really your first introduction to the Corps, right?
It was. You know, I first thank you, Brandon, for the invitation to be here. It's an honor to address the podcast today. So appreciate the opportunity. Being on active duty was my first introduction to, I guess, the Army side of the Corps of Engineers. It was one of those things when I was in college, as everybody struggles with what they're going to do for the rest of their lives kind of thing, or at least the first part of their lives. The Army was a great choice, and fortunately I was able to be able to get a scholarship, and the Army was able to pay for the last couple of years of my schooling, and I was able to actually have a job when I got out, and so I entered active duty, and went that track for about 10 years, and then was able to, fortunately, I got married, and then that kind of shifted some priorities around, and so was able to, fortunately, be able to get picked up by the Fort Worth District coming off active duty, so as a civilian.
You're from the Memphis, Tennessee area, right?
Yes.
Originally,
yes,
and
right.
you're a Memphis grad?
I am.
Back when it was Memphis State?
That's right, yes.
Back when there was still a state at the end of it, right?
That's right.
Now it's Memphis.
It is.
Where are some of the places that you served during your Army career, and how did they prepare you for your ultimate Corps career as a civilian? Right.
No, yeah, so, in those days, my breadth of travel was very limited. So I entered active duty and was at Fort Belvoir. In those days, they trained the new engineer officers and a lot of the NCO Corps and that kind of thing at Belvoir. And so I was thrust right in the middle of the Washington, D.C. area. Very exciting, great place for a young person to be. And so spent some time there, and then was at Fort Bragg for 3 years. At Fort Bragg, we did a number of deployments, OCONUS deployments to Panama, Honduras while I was there, number of rotations to the NTC in California, that kind of thing. So, in the first few years of the Army career, it just really was exposed to a lot of things that were bigger than Memphis, Tennessee. Right, in my experience. And so from there, I went to Fort Leonard Wood because the schoolhouse had moved to Fort Leonard Wood by then. Spent a few years there, or a few months there, and then did a tour in Korea. Did a company command in Korea, and then was posted to a Corps of Engineer district in Fort Worth, which was kind of a normal process for an engineer officer in those days. You did your command, and then you kind of had a choice of what you could do. So fortunately, I was able to do that, and really saw the civilian side of the Army Corps of Engineers that I knew existed, but what is this animal, right? And so began my journey there. With the civilian side as a military officer at first. Yeah.
I'm kind of going off script, I know, but you said you were in Honduras.
Yeah.
So you were with Joint Task Force Bravo?
Yes, I was. JTF Bravo. We were down in a place called San Lorenzo, building an airstrip down there, field landing strip, out of reinforced dirt, basically,
right.
With lime stabilized dirt. Right in between, near Choluteca was one of the larger areas down there. But it was right in between, in those days, Nicaragua and El Salvador, and right along a kind of a dicey pathway there.
Yeah.
So it was interesting days for sure.
I'm an alum of
JTF Bravo.
JTF Bravo.
Yeah. I was able.
Time at Sotocana.
I was going to say I did make it up to Sotocana Air Base a couple of times, and that was civilization for us.
That was, yeah, in Komayawa.
It was a beautiful place. I mean, you had the lush jungles and everything up there, but we were kind of in a more arid part of the country. But
those airstrips are still being used to this day.
Well, you can hit Google Earth and see the airstrip, and it's like the town has like encroached it. It's like this a dual road for them now, so it's kind of interesting to see. But yeah.
Well, so you were at Fort Worth, and then you eventually, I think you made your way over to Little Rock, correct?
Yes.
After Fort Worth, you were at Fort Worth for like how many years?
Yeah, I was so.
Because you had a number of positions.
Yeah, let's not forget Dallas, right? I was in SWD for 8 of those years. So I was in Fort Worth for 17 years, 8 of which were with the SWD, the MSC Command. And then after that, spent a little over 6 years in Little Rock District, and now about 7 years here. So, yeah, kind of bounced around a little bit.
So what does the Deputy District Engineer for Program Management do?
Yeah, so let me start with a little bit of context, right? So this position is, I guess, geologically speaking with USACE, this position and the whole PPMD organization is kind of new. It's been around since the early 90s when USACE, was catching up with industry in those days, and they realized that the concept of life cycle project management was something that we needed to adopt in USACE. And so with that, they created an organization to do that, and that was Programs and Project Management. The Deputy District Engineer for Programs and Project Management, which is one of the hats that I wear, was the chief of that functional area, along with an engineering chief and a construction chief and operations and that kind of thing. So they established that position, and it's been around for about 30 years now. And in that time, it's evolved. So typically in the construct of today's position, the shorthand for that is DPM. I wear 4 hats. Really, if we're kind of looking at things, 2 of those hats face outward to the organization. 2 of them kind of face inward. The Chief of Programs and Project Management, which I think everybody is mostly familiar with here in the organization, is one of those hats. Senior Civilian is another role that is associated with my position. And that deals with peers, stakeholders, that type of thing. Senior advisor to the commander. So the commander and I spend a lot of time with each other and deal with any number of things going on in the district, the region, and the nation in terms of our mission. And then finally, a regional and national role as either board member or participant in a meeting forum or an issue resolution or a Tiger team or whatever it is. So about 4 different hats. And so the amount of time I spend in any one of those areas varies, but what's of great help is having a team of folks in PPMD, like Patrick Beard, dealing with the military programs, Loretta, in her, former role as the Civil Works program manager for the district, and Ashley Allender dealing with our new missions in California, and of course Michelle Lay as the assistant chief of PPMD that handles and tackles any number of day-to-day issues. And so, huge help with that. Great, branch chiefs, PMs, program analysts, PCO, to keep the wheels turning so that the other aspects of this role for the DPM can be adequately serviced as well.
Your bio, when I was going over it, it mentions that you are a Gallup's strength coach.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now,
yeah.
and I noticed this about you over the years, because because I remember even recently, right? So we're doing a town hall. And
Right.
you're saying basically this is your last town hall, and you're saying
Right.
kind of your farewell to the workforce. And you mentioned, people as our first element of our vision. People as
Right.
the first element
Right.
of our vision.
Yeah.
And can you talk about how that people development role, how and why that's so important to you?
Yeah.
Because it does seem to be a very big part of what I've even seen over the years from you. You are very big on developing
Yes.
people.
Yes, I am. And I tell you, I've come a long way with that. It's one thing looking at a task to do. And so I'm kind of going back in my mind to when I was a young lieutenant and getting something done, and you just wanted a human being to plug the vacuum and do that. Well, okay, that's easy when you are kind of in that mindset and in that mode. But I'd like to think over the years I've improved that outlook. And I think it's certainly true today is, really our business right here, it's about people. I mean, it really is. And no matter how you slice it, and if I were to extend that thought, even with our mission set, it really is about our communities, protecting not only property but people as we get out there. So it's all about whether we are, doing our mission and protecting people, or our workforce and hiring the right people, or getting folks in the right, positions so that they can thrive. Or if we're astute as managers and leaders in the district, no matter what level we're at, to detect when somebody could potentially be cast in another role that they haven't even thought about. So help them with their potential, help them with opportunities. And so the Gallup piece of that was really eye-opening to me several decades ago, from a strengths standpoint, and teasing out, when we are always able to take a moment and take a look at ourselves. There's a number of different tools out there to help us do that, and Gallup has one called Strengths Finder, and that was really an epiphany moment for me to understand that we got some things that we're all naturally good at, and they help identify those, and so that helps with how you spend your time. How you're going to train, how are you going to do some OJT, some developmentals, or even what career path or agency or private sector, public sector, dealing with your family, dealing with your church, dealing with anything off duty or whatever it might be. It helps, deal with those situations that you might be in and identify those attributes or strengths in others and adapt to situations and that kind of thing. So the people business is something that, it's really the underpinning of our culture and who we are and what we do. And, is it a pleasure to come to work? Or is it a chore to come to work? Or do we like working with our people? So to try to address that, I think is important. And I view as part of my job here to influence that at every level and then set the pace and the culture for that. So yeah, it's important. It's like the most important thing to me in how we do our business. Yeah.
As a DPM, people, whether this is accurate or inaccurate, I think a lot of people look at the DPM as, you're overseeing the people who oversee the project managers who in civil works and military
Right.
programs, and
Right.
and they and maybe that's sort of a pigeonholed perception, but I mean it is how I think a lot of people view
Mm-hmm.
it as, like, there's your civil works and your military programs, and then you have the DPM who really is working pretty close with
Right.
both of those leaders. In that, you teach the USACE Prospect course,
Right.
which is where our engineers and our project managers learn the formal schooling aspect of how to be a project manager. Project manager. Can you talk about why you got into that originally? And you seemed like you really enjoyed doing that a lot.
Yeah, I like it. I think it's good. I've been involved with that group, and we pull our instructors from across USACE, and so I would consider all of them friends of mine at this stage of the game. I've been doing that for 15 years, I guess, in teaching that course. Yeah. So really, what we're talking about here is it's a prospect course. It's USACE prospect course number 355, basic project management in USACE. But it's just not for PMs. It's just not for PAs. I mean, I would say the minority of people in those classes are from programs and project management. So we had folks from counsel in there, lawyers in there, paralegals, real estate folks, contracting people, OPMs, right? Operations project managers and their staffs. So, and which is important because project management is just not the purview of PPMD, right? Everybody. I mean, it's a decentralized concept. We're the holders of the function, right? And the basic process, but really the application of that really spills into really anything that we do, and we do a lot of that, and we want it to be decentralized. Folks need to be empowered to do that. So, what I focus on, and it's going to be a theme here, but what I focus on in that is the first day primarily, and it's all day, and it's people, it's soft skills, right? So, one of the first things I ask the classes typically is like, how many people in here don't deal with people? Well, hey, everybody deals with people. There's not one thing we do. So, we surround ourselves with automated information systems, P2, RMS, CFOMs. We have computers, we got phones, we got all the. But it takes human beings to make all that work and then come together as teams to make everything work. So, we answer a lot of questions as to why, especially on the front end before people actually take the classes to what's this first day on Strengths Finder and team building and team interactions and that kind of thing. So, but then by the end of the week, they're like, I understand now, right? They thought they were going to get a scheduling class or a how to budget a project. So we talk about that and we, some of the nuances, some of the contracting tools, very important things to understand. But, the 5 fundamentals of project management typically are, what's the schedule, what's the scope, what we're trying to do, what's the budget or cost that we're trying to, quality measures, which is that's a class in and of itself, right? And then risk, how do we assess that? So we talk about all that, but Brandon, the sinew that binds that all together is relationships. It's people doing that, those tasks that need to be done, coordinating, communicating, and moving projects forward in this case, or issue resolution or communicating with our stakeholders, whatever it might be. But that all involves the soft skills to maneuver in that environment. So it's very tactile. It's a very, very people-oriented business.
And you're dealing too with, so as a project manager, you're dealing with people from various functional areas,
right?
Who you don't technically have any formal authority over, aside from the fact that they're on your team. So you have to figure out a way to motivate people who you don't necessarily have the ability to counsel.
Right. Exactly.
So how do you teach that, or can you teach that? Do you think it's something that some people just have a knack for it, or is it something that really can be learned?
Well, I think both. When I was on the Army side, the active Army side of things, tons of leadership. I mean, the Army is all about command and leadership as an officer, right? So you get that in buckets. There's a lot of that kind of training, and then you get to practice it as you go through your career there. And so the art part of that business really translated well over to the USACE side in terms of dealing with the civilian environment, because people talk about hard power and soft power. We're really talking about soft power, soft skills. What is that ability to influence, speak with confidence, gain respect, that kind of thing, in order to be effective. And folks, I think people who lead projects, not necessarily just PMs, but in our own, PDTs that we develop here in the district or in USACE or whatever teams that we're on, in our respective functional areas, folks who are effective at that brand of leading, keep that in mind. They're able to adapt to the folks that they're dealing with. They're able to be heard in a meeting, to influence appropriately without, breaking relationships and that kind of thing. So I think anybody worth their salt understands the art part of that leadership component and knows when to engage, when not to engage, which is almost as important, on knowing when not to say something or when to do something versus doing something, and building that trust so that people trust you along the way. So, yeah, that's one of the unique things if we're talking specifically about PMs. They got the responsibility but no authority over the teams, and that I think that's one of the strengths of our organization, especially in Tulsa, is that we come together every day, many times a day, to move projects forward in this fashion, and we get it, and we're able to get it done. I mentioned the other day in the town hall, determined professionals, right? That's something that, I've thought about this a lot. What is it that's unique in our district here in Tulsa that distinguishes us from others, perhaps, in terms of how we do our business? And I think that's true. I think there's again, no drama in what we do. We get it, we get it done. Now, that's not to say that we're robots and we just don't have any feedback, but if it's got to, when it comes right down to it, if a job's got to be done, we think about it rationally and we move out and get it done with that resolve, and that is something that we propagate through our organization, just not from PPMD, but in operations division. These like managers out there running these projects. That's hard work, in Kansas and Oklahoma and Texas. I mean, that's tough work. They do this every day. Real estate is running several national missions on their own. They do this every day. Contracting in any number of regional missions that they deal with, take care of business like they need to. So I think the secret's out. We now have missions in California.
Right. That's true. Yeah.
We now have missions in California on the last two DSAC 1 dams in the country that need to get done are now our responsibility to get done in the Los Angeles area.
When you get a project like that, that's technically outside of our boundaries.
Right.
How does that make you feel as a DPM? I mean, obviously there's some pride there.
Right. Yeah, I think it's a great compliment when the 3-star general says, General Beck, this is your mission, and then General Beck immediately gives the commander and me a call and says it's your mission to handle. It's of course. It's a two-sided coin. You're very proud that they picked you in terms of you as in the district to do this mission, but then reality sets in, right? It's like, oh, we got to get this mission done, right? How are we going to do it? But we do get it done, and it's a great compliment to our team to be able to do this work. And it's not without a lot of visibility, right? It's almost like two districts operating, you know. So the burden on the leadership team is to make sure that we don't impede what we're doing here in Tulsa proper, Tulsa District proper, and that we are able to do that, what we call enterprise mission assignments from the enterprise level, and give that the appropriate level of support also.
Is there a project the district has completed or taken on that you're most proud of, maybe? And if you want to name multiple, so you don't have to single out any specific.
Well, what comes to mind? What comes to mind is a lot of things, but I would say that our Tulsa West Tulsa levee study that we did in 16 months, that hasn't been done in 45 years in USACE.
Yeah, and that's typically a three-year process.
It was done in 16 months, and we needed it
during a difficult time.
It was, yeah,
Sure.
Yeah, very true. And I'm very proud of that in terms of how we responded as a district, how we were able to protect those resources on that team, because we had very qualified people on that team that had other demands on their time, but we had great partners in Tulsa County and at the Levee District that helped us along the way, and we had alignment within all the way. I'll say all the way up to the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works. Right. That was in alignment with what we're trying to do here, and so it was I think a textbook case of what right looks like and what we can do, not only in Tulsa District, because proof of concept was here, but in other places around the country that we can get it done.
Yeah. What else is, and what's so interesting about that is I think when I started here in 2014 and I started learning about how this whole thing works, if based on the conversations and what I'd heard up to that point, if you had said that we'd be doing this in 2019, 2020, I wouldn't have believed you, because I didn't think, I think a lot of people didn't think it was going to be possible.
Right. And so, it's not without a lot of effort from everybody involved.
Right.
I mean, we had to make sure, jealously guard the resources on the team, protect them to make sure they could do their jobs. I think it's a testament to the mid managers and mid leaders, as well as senior leaders in the district, to support it, to let the team, empower the team to make some decisions and get to the end state that we needed to be at with the appropriate amount of senior level involvement. Because, we could have easily micromanaged this thing into a 5-year study, right? But that's not doing the community any good. And so everybody operated at the appropriate level in the appropriate ways at the appropriate times. And that's like a ballet almost. We did a very good job of that here in the district.
Yeah, and the flood actually turned out to be a positive.
It did.
In that overall event, because the 2019 flood let them see sort of the
risk.
The risk, yeah.
Yeah. And in fact, we were able to validate. I mean, it was like a real-time validation of some models that we were using at the time. So, I mean, and then we tweaked. And so there was really no question as to the technical components of that, because we just went through the event. And this is it. This is what it looks like. So it was it was a very star-aligning moment in a number of different ways.
Yeah. So you've worked at Fort Worth, Little Rock, Tulsa. What's been your favorite job that you've had?
Yeah, I mean,
and you don't have to go by location necessarily.
No, it's okay. I I like this job. Yeah, but I'm leaving, right? So, but I like this job a lot. Had opportunities I've been here 7 years, like I mentioned previously. Had opportunities to do some other things, but I want to be here. I enjoy the intensity. I enjoy the huge competence that we have in our, not only our senior leaders, but our branch chiefs, our section chiefs, and then the folks who work out in the field. I mean, we have such a unique environment here in terms of that competence that it's that I don't want to say it makes it makes aspects of my job very enjoyable and workable in order to service all the targets that we have out there. And then, excuse me, and then be able to position for today. But like I tell my folks, it's like we need to be not only attacking today, we dealing with our current operations, but we need to have one eye at or over the horizon. So 1 foot in today, 1 foot in tomorrow, or next year or the year after, all the time. We need to have that perspective, and so it's been very very easy to have that orientation here in the district for me, in my capacity to advise the commander as he postures for our mission. So I like this job, and so every job builds on the previous ones, and so from when I was able to enjoy my first project engineer job as a young captain in Fort Worth District to today, I still remember, Sandy Miller, a program analyst in Fort Worth District's PM shop teaching me about CFMs and how that works. And I use that today in terms of understanding finances and how money flows and all that stuff. So I think all the jobs that I've had have built up to today. The teaching, the prospect course, in Little Rock, when we stood up the Dam Safety Production Center as a regional entity, which was kind of a first, there was some risk there. And we accepted that as an organization, as a region, and we have done very well with that. There's a cybersecurity center for all of our hydropower center of expertise there that we stood up. So kind of understanding and getting to understand how that works was hugely beneficial. And then prior to that, I would say in the early war years of the early 2000s, we decided in USACE we needed to transform, and we did. And so fortunately I was a part of that as we did change, which is not a small thing to do for USACE. And so seeing how that works, how hard that is, and where we have to influence and make those changes was all built to really helping me understand this role. Because when I initially considered putting in for this job many years ago, I was kind of nervous about it. I didn't really know what I didn't know about it. And now that I've been in it, it's been a true pleasure, and certainly serving here in Tulsa District.
So when a person, what's more important from your perspective, where you're located geographically or what you're doing professionally from your perspective?
Yeah. I probably made the comment to several folks that during the Max telework during COVID, I say this is people business, right? Mm-hmm. I really struggled, because I like sitting here like we're sitting across from each other, having a conversation, and seeing the body language, seeing your reaction to some things influences how I behave, influences how I will convey information to you. That was just hard for me. And so I think there's a hybrid balance of that. I know that there's some aspects of our work that could be done in a more of a virtual environment, and that's perfectly fine. But I think that we cannot ever, forget that this is a people business, and somehow we have to continually bring that back into the equation. however, whatever form that needs to take. If that did I answer your question like you intended it?
I was asking. I was focusing on geographically in terms of region or state or city or whatever versus your
People.
job that you're working in, or what you're doing, versus where you are.
Okay.
Like where you're doing it.
Okay.
Is it more important to be in the place you want to be, do you think, in terms of...
broadly speaking.
In terms of like,
right.
if I said, give me a geographical location, is it more important to be in a specific geographical location doing a job, or is it more important to be doing the job you want to do somewhere else?
I see what
would you think from your perspective?
I took that a different direction.
No, that's fine.
No, I think, I want to say, if you're doing the job you want to do, then you never work a day in your life, right?
Right.
I mean, it's one of those kind of things in my book. I've moved around a lot. Fortunately, I've been able to do that to try to pursue those positions that I thought would be good, and kind of match my skill sets and what I'd like to do. And so, I think, but we don't always have that choice, right? Sometimes we have to follow. Where our family leads us, or where other issues will take us for whatever reason. But I'd like to think, though, that if you can land in a position that really suits you and suits your skills, then that is a true that is really a good thing. I mean, it'll be a good thing for one's career aspirations, your orientation to not only work but life, to many other things, mental health, if you will. I think it has a lot of positive impacts beyond geography.
Now, you were talking about an organizational change earlier, about going sort of being in the Corps during times where the organization was changing.
Right.
There was this reorganization.
Right.
And that creates some culture change.
Yeah.
How do you manage, like, especially with what you were talking about with the type of changes that you were experiencing as the Corps was changing? How do you manage that? Because there's a lot of nervousness.
Yeah.
There's a joke that I remember a commander used to make, that if you want to freak everybody out, take a proposed reorg chart and leave it on like the copy machine and just set it there and just watch the chaos that ensues.
Freak out.
But how do you manage a change like the type that you went through?
And we've done, so we've done a few here since I've been here in this organization to try to adapt to our mission set. And so I think first and foremost, it needs to be drilled pretty hard by the senior staff on why we're doing this. I think everything we do should be driven by either current mission or anticipated mission as we expect it to happen, because those things never take. Well, we were able to pivot pretty quickly to California in a term sort of way as we try to catch up with the paperwork. That's very rare in our organization. So I would say in a normal reorg kind of situation, that needs to be, needs to follow a very disciplined, rigorous process to make sure that the need is there to do that, because it is disruptive to people, And I think that we've done very well in the last certainly 10, 15 years of maybe 12 of making sure that the human component, we can divorce ourselves away from thinking about the people piece of this pretty quickly as we look at blocks on a piece of paper and functions and missions and stuff like that. But really, we need to bring our folks along with us as we go through it. And so as these things mature, as a proposed reorg, let's say, would mature, I say we get to a point where we're very transparent with the workforce. That used to not be the case in many decades ago. That used to just kind of get sprung on the workforce, which was probably scar tissue that a lot of folks still have from those days. But I think we've done a better job, personally, to convey what it is we're trying to do and why we're trying to do it, and with a caveat of, if we can minimize or have no effect on the people aspect of it. I think we've done a lot better job of being transparent about that in the last few years. And so, to me, it all comes around to management doing their homework. Does it make sense? And if it does, then we get that information out to our folks as quickly as possible so everybody understands what it is and why, what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, you hear a lot about in leadership texts about, you sort of sensitize, and then you sort of unfreeze something, then you destroy the old system, then you refreeze the new system to make sure that everything is in place. And I just wonder if the hardest part of that is the getting people to buy in. I mean, that's kind of the big difficult aspect of any, I guess, organizational change is the buy-in aspect. What do you think the most important thing you can do to get the buy-in is?
Yeah, and is to I think to convey rational thought to people. Now, that doesn't mean people are either going to have a vote in that or they're going to believe that, right? Because some people just are uncomfortable with that all the way around. So, we do. This is a benevolent dictatorship, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we have. It's a military organization, so I think we do a very good job of trying to get that buy-in for folks. And at a minimum, if that can't happen, at least convey the rationale. Okay, this is why we're doing it and what we're doing. This is the potential benefits. And this is the downside of that decision, right? This is, let's be honest, there's two sides to those coins.
Yeah, I think most people just want to feel like they've been heard.
Yeah.
Or that their concerns are at least acknowledged in most cases.
And I have to say, along those lines, there's been several times when folks have brought up things that we need to address.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that we have open lines of communication with everybody, and folks' opinion does matter. It really does.
So what are you going to do now once you retire?
Well, I'm going to be kind of in a sabbatical mode, I think, is where I'm at. And, as I talk to Tracy's my wife, as she and I talk about things, I think we're going to just kind of ease into it a little bit, not have too many expectations in terms of like post-retirement vocation or anything like that. I won't consider anything like that until the summertime, I think. But just kind of take some stock, just kind of see where things are at, and then see where things are in the summertime.
Now, are you going to stay in the Tulsa area?
Oh yeah, Tulsa's a great place, and we've got a lot of friends in our neighborhood, and of course work here. I hope to stay in touch with most everybody here that I can, and keep up with everybody.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
Well, look, always in these with, what have I not asked you that I should have asked you that you wouldn't? What's the answer you wanted to give me to the question I didn't ask?
That's funny. I tell you, the DPM, when I was brand new, I think even when I was still on active duty, but with the Fort Worth District, I used to look at the DPM as an enigma, right? It was like this guy who would show up to work, obviously, every day, but I really didn't know what he did, but he was the chief of my, boss's boss kind of thing at the time, but really didn't know what they did. Now I do. It's there's a lot of a lot of behind the scenes activity that goes on that I kind of anticipated, but really until you're in it, you don't really know it. Dealing with our senior executives and general officers at the division office a lot in terms of forming and framing, positions and how we do business, and how to communicate with counterparts across, at least in USACE, and then stakeholders outside of USACE, so that we're all in alignment. And then my peers. So I consider all my DPM counterparts in the other districts my friends. We all grew up together, so we all know each other. So there's a lot of interaction that happens. So that enigma has now become clearer to me as I've occupied the seat in this capacity from many, many years ago. So, anyway, it's been my favorite job, bar none, of being in USACE for sure.
Well, and you've spent your career in Southwest Division,
I have.
So you've been a pace setter the whole time,
right.
Pretty much, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how long did it take you to get used to the DPM position after you arrived? I mean, obviously there's always that breaking in period
Right.
where you're kind of learning, I guess, some of the things.
Yeah.
How long do you think it took you to really feel like you were in the organization?
Yeah. Well, two things going on there, right? So I was coming from Little Rock to here, so I knew a lot of people in Tulsa, but I hadn't served here for
Right.
decades, kind of thing, right? Number one. Number two, I knew about the mission, but I didn't know everything about all the missions in the district. But I did know a lot of folks at SWD and the other districts and that kind of thing. So it took probably, and so everybody, the leadership model resets every time somebody new comes in. So it took probably about a year for me to get comfortable with all the aspects of the mission and then get to know the field and make the trips out there, kind of probably as a new commander would in this first year. But people, I think, were very kind and responsive to me in the seat right off the bat, which I was very thankful for, which it fits with the culture of the district, right? Everybody is very good in that way. So, probably a good year to kind of get all the components and all the visits and put eyes on all the projects in, for sure.
Well, Lee, I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me and talk to us, and I really do. I wish you the best in retirement, and I'm hoping that we see you around.
Yeah.
Very often. Thank you once again for taking the time.
Thank you, Brandon. Appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you for joining us for Corpstruction. Corpstruction is a production of the Tulsa District U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Public Affairs Office. This episode of Corpstruction is brought to you by the Deputy District Engineer for Programs and Management. Thanks for joining us and have a great day. I'm hoping that we see you around.
Yeah.
Very often. Thank you once again for taking the time.
Thank you, Brandon. Appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you for joining us for Corpstruction. Corpstruction is a production of the Tulsa District U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Public Affairs Office. This episode of Corpstruction is brought to you by the Deputy District Engineer for Programs and Management. Thanks for joining us and have a great day.